Good morning. This novel, The Power and the Glory by Graham Greene, is likely the last piece of literature I will ever teach as an English teacher, at least at Edgewood High School. So let me say at this point that this was not my job or my position or my work. It was my honor and my privilege to teach fine literature to diligent, intelligent students like you. Let me also say that in my years of teaching this honors course, this class was probably one of the better ones, one of the best ones I've ever had. You're a nice group of people and you're very bright. Keep those qualities. They will serve you well in life. And so let's begin. And we begin with a man in chapter 1, Mr. Tench. Mr. Tench is a dentist, and he's waiting down by a dock where his ship is docked for an ether cylinder. Ether is a type of anesthetic. Without anesthetic, there's a lot of pain. Pain is a major idea in this book. We're in Mexico. It's hot, really hot, hotter than it ever gets around here. And there are buzzards, the death birds. And Mr. Tench is waiting, and behind him is a policeman or a soldier wearing a gun. And Mr. Tench is on his way to the dock. He passes the treasury, which used to be a church. And so here we come to some rhetorical questions. How important is your religious faith to you? If your religion were outlawed, would you fight for it? Would you die and let yourself be martyred for it? Because in this country we're in this book, religion is illegal. And if you go back to T.S. Eliot's poem Preludes that I lectured on earlier, it's a dark, dirty, bleak, routine, monotonous world because there's no God in it. There's no God or religion in this country. The ship is the General Obregon. It's an old ship, it's a rusty ship. Decay is a big part of this book. Mr. Tench is a dentist, he deals with tooth decay. And they're offloading beer. But in this country, alcohol is illegal. So there must be a double standard somewhere here. Tench is not remembering why he's here. Then he kind of remembers he's here. Meanwhile, that policeman soldier behind him is leaning on his pistol on his hip, symbol of power, the power and the glory. But he's complaining about his mouth because his teeth are hurting him. Mr. Tench has removed them all. Tench has survived by procrastinating and putting off everything. That's his whole world, and forgetting and the heat. That's his whole world. And he's seen several ships come and go, and this is another one. Looks on the deck of the ship, and a pretty girl comes out, and he goes, "My God, a pretty one." And he's looking at her. She's a symbol of beauty. But in a while, the ship, the General Obregon, is going to leave, and the beauty of the girl will go with it. And if you take away beauty, what have you got left? Ugliness. But there's somebody behind him who speaks English. He's dressed in a shabby suit. He's got a small attaché case with him. And Tench begins to talk to him and says, "Well, I have lived alone for 15 years. He must be lonely. The buzzards are still there. Buzzards are death birds. A lot of death in this novel." But Tench likes to hear English and asks the man if he learned his in the United States, and asks him if he wants to come to his studio, office, house, home for a drink. And he invites him home. The man asks him if he's a Catholic. Tench can't answer because Tench doesn't believe in religion. The man says he was looking for somebody named Lopez. Well, Tench says they shot Mr. Lopez weeks ago. Mr. Lopez used to help undesirable people get out of the country. Apparently this man, this mysterious man, wants to get out of the country. And so Tench invites him home. It's not much of a home. 4 walls, he sleeps there. And thinks that we should be thankful we cannot see the horrors and degradations lying around our childhood. The village that he's in is not paved. Every year the rains come and turn the streets into mud. Tench is the best dentist in this village. Why? Well, he's the only one. That's like saying, Mr. Regina is the best English teacher ever, but he's the only English teacher on earth, so I guess that makes him the best one. It's you get the idea. Locks the door behind him. Tench is a dentist who tries to keep up with things, tries to keep up with the best instruments and the best methods, but he's in a backwater, middle of nowhere, and it's not easy to do. Oddly enough, however, in the window of his home, there is the picture of the Madonna. There's a religious symbol. And so Tench does, to keep up with the latest methods, but there's a look of vacancy, emptiness. The heat is overpowering. And Tench is like a lost man. And he observes, Tench does, the man. He says, your teeth don't look too good. You don't look too good. But the man wants to drink some brandy. This is our hero. Who is he? He is the last priest in the entire country. And the authorities are hunting for him, and he's on the run. And he's drinking brandy because he's an alcoholic. The brandy staves off bad feelings. Tench has a picture of his kids. He has a picture of his wife. They're in England. He's in Mexico. He hasn't seen them for 16 years. He's stopped writing to them. This man calls this a Christian country. Is it really? But Tench has given up writing to his family. And I mean the world, the way things happen. The priest drinks his brandy like it's an indulgence. That's a religious term. And says, well, maybe the people didn't have much, but at least they had God. Now they've taken that away. Tench has put off leaving here. He says there's no difference in the teeth. This is an awful place. It's lonely. 5 years, I thought I'd be here for 5 years and I'd get out. Now it's been 10 years. Now it's 12 years. And I just keep putting it off. Someone knocks at the door. It's a child asking for a doctor. His mother is sick. He's got 2 mules to take somebody back. There's a new doctor in town because his mother's sick. So Tench turns to our priest and says, aren't you a doctor? Well, no. But everybody must know you're in town. The stranger says he can't do any good. But the mother is dying, and the priest can do some good. He can give her her last rites. But he gets up to do it unwillingly. It's like, oh, all right, I've got to go do this thing. All right, I'll do it. But he does get up to do it. He gets up unwillingly. It always seems to happen like this. He's going to miss the boat that will get him out of the country. And Tench did not get his anesthetic ether cylinder either. And Tench tells the guy, you can't do any good. But the stranger says, you know nothing. And says that Tench is lucky he can get out. But Tench hasn't left yet. It's good, Tench feels, when the priest has left, to talk to a stranger. He's back in his room. He's lonely. But the stranger left a book behind called La Eterna Martyr, the Eternal Martyr. And we have to talk about martyrs. Martyrs are people who die for something, usually a religious faith. Jesus Christ is the best example of all. There are others. But to do that, you have to be pious and devoted to your faith and on a completely different level from most people. We're going to have to see if our priest, how he stacks up on the martyr report card. He also has priestly things with him. That's what's in that small attaché case. And as he works his way through the novel, we're going to have to see these things fall away from him. He's left a book behind already. What about the other things? There'll be a breviary. Maybe there's a crucifix. Maybe there's some prayer beads. Whatever's in there. One by one, he's going to lose these things. So Tench hides it. And then goes back down to the dock, and there's the ship. Oh well, a little additional pain was hardly noticeable in the huge abandonment. Okay, well, when you're getting your wisdom teeth pulled out, we'll see about that. The girl going away says to herself, I am happy. Mr. Tench is not happy. Our priest is on a mule, one of the mules the boy bought, riding back to the sick mother. He's praying to be caught. Okay. The priest is the hero of the novel. But how heroic is he? If you go back to Beowulf, he was incredibly heroic. He dies defending his country. But this guy is on the run and running away from the authorities, but at the same time, he's praying to be caught. So I don't know how you figure that one out. How heroic is he? He's trying to escape, but he wants to be caught. Chapter 2. We're at the police station. There's a squad of police. They're pretty raggedy looking. The buildings have their facades peeling off. There's mud underneath. And people are bored. They're walking around the square. The men are walking in one direction. The women are walking in the other because there's no church to go to anymore. And we meet our other character, the lieutenant. And the lieutenant has a well-washed, starched, perfectly pressed uniform. His buttons gleam. His gun is clean. He is a perfect example of an authority figure. His men that he commands, on the other hand, are slovenly, ragged, not like him at all. There are mosquitoes whirring. It's a hot place. And he goes to see the chief of police. And the chief of police has a toothache. Maybe he should go see Mr. Tench. More pain in the novel. And the governor the chief has heard from the governor. And they start talking about a priest. And that they're hunting for the priest. The problem is they have no photographs of how to identify him. Meanwhile, somewhere out there, there's a James Calver, a United States American, wanted for bank robbery and murder. So he's wandering around somewhere. But they're more interested in catching the priest. And the word fanatic comes into the novel. And the lieutenant is a fanatic. But what does he worship? What does he believe in? They've got a newspaper photograph of the priest they're trying to catch, but it's from a long time ago. But the lieutenant has a real scorn for priests because they got everything so easily. They got a safe job. They got the money of the poor people. And he's got a hatred for them. A hatred for these priests who take from the poor and sit in their church and have it so easy. They don't know who the priest is. He can pass as a gringo. A gringo is an American in Mexico. The lieutenant says they all look alike to me. And he thinks of his parents who were tired by their long physical labor on the plantations. And then the priest comes around and takes the money. Meanwhile, the chief's got a tooth that's poisoning all of his life. The lieutenant doesn't think that the priest does any real good. If a few people die, it's no big deal. His boots are polished, and he's got venom in him, poison. So the lieutenant has come to the chief for approval of a plan. His plan is this. He'll take a man from every village in the state as a hostage. If they don't report where the priest is, he'll shoot the hostages. Remember that the lieutenant is wearing a clean, well-polished holster and a clean gun on his hip. The lieutenant says, wouldn't it be worth it? We could rid those people forever of this oppressive religion thing. The lieutenant walks down the street. The syndicate of workers is now the syndicate of workers. It used to be a school, and he wiped out that. And the whole town has changed. And the playground was the site of a cathedral. So no cathedral, no religion. The windows of the street that he walks down are barred. Are these people in this country imprisoned by the lack of religion? It's the hour of prayer. And he's infuriated to think that there are still people who believe in and love a merciful God, which brings us to the next question. You can outlaw religion, but can you keep everybody from practicing it? It's almost like prohibition in American history. People drank more during prohibition than when there was no prohibition. You can't govern how people think or how they act. You can't watch everyone. But this is his land, and he wants to wall it in with steel and eradicate everything from it, which made him miserable as a child. He remembers the priest they shot a while back. They've shot 5 so far, but can you kill everybody? There's one priest who's alive, and he's conformed to the governor's law. If you're going to leave the priesthood, you got to marry. And so you have to violate that vow. They won't mind a little pain now for what they're going to get later. We now come to a woman, there's a pause in the novel, who's reading a book to her children. The book is about young Juan. And young Juan is about to be shot by a firing squad. He is a martyr to his religion. The boy is very bored with the story. He wants to get to the part where they shoot him. He's interested in the gun part. And he strangles a yawn and asks if this kid is really a saint. Are they all like that? And then he asks about Padre Jose. We'll meet Padre Jose in a little while. What about the man who came to see us? Was he a martyr? Well, I'm not really sure. He smelled funny. Well, he smelled funny because he had alcohol in his breath. Apparently our priest stopped with these people. So the mother's very upset about Juan's disregard for religion, goes to her husband. And the husband's attitude is, look, we've been abandoned here. The church has left us. And that's all there is. And if the church isn't going to help us, then we should leave it. Well, the mother doesn't believe in that at all. The father knows, though, how they've been abandoned. There's no church. Nobody fought for them. She says she would rather die, but we have to go on living. And now we're with Padre Jose. He's sitting in his backyard, looking up at the sky, trying to pick out the constellations. And he's got a priestly, clerical manner about him. He was in the priesthood for 40 years. Everybody's asleep. He's thinking about another world, another place where Christ might not have died yet. But a woman, his wife, this is the priest who was forced to get married if he wanted to continue living, is calling to him to come in. And he's like a slave. He almost envies the priests who have died. They're taken up to the cemetery and shot against the wall. And they called them martyrs. And he wants to be a martyr. He wants to have some kind of religious meaning. He thinks of himself as a clown or a buffoon, a sacrilege, a defilement to God, an obscene picture hung here every day to corrupt children with. There's nothing for him to do, no praying that he can do. He's lived for 2 years in a continuous state of mortal sin. He has got no one to hear his confession. Only a priest can hear another priest's confession. His wife is a harsh housekeeper. And he has to give in to her. And meanwhile, behind the wall that borders his backyard, there are some little kids, and they're taunting him. They're taunting him by saying, Padre Jose, Padre Jose. They're making fun of him. There's no respect for him in his home or in his town. These are chapters 1 and 2.